Oh my God, I love that video so much. Too bad it's so short. Hello, everybody again. It's another Friday. The week flew by, and I'm so happy today to introduce you to somebody so special and close to my heart, because I'm looking for people who stand up for the horses and speak out loud and change this insanity we do sometimes as horse owners, or in today's talk, we talk about breeders. These videos, which you will see, are online since a long time. I'm talking about Barbara Schulte. She is a breeder. She is a journalist, a very famous published author, and I'm trying to convince her to put that book into English. I'll even have somebody who is interested to change that for her in English if it's not existing. For you guys who have not met me yet, I just quick an introduction. Myself, I grew up in Buenos Aires, came back to Germany in the late 60s. Then I was lucky enough to represent the German team with my horse Pirate. He's a Hanoverian, and funny enough, this horse here was 17.3. We had a little problem. He liked to overjump his fences. This was our first German 3-day eventing championship, and we were training for the '84 Olympics, and something happens in his shoulders. Not an accident in riding, but doing the riding, we thought there's something wrong in his structure. So I surrounded myself with lots of professionals from all over the world. And these people do nothing else than study the horse back. And when they have the fundings from various associations, then of course, they go into great detail. So I had a pleasure to work with these people. And then I also got introduced to the headmaster from the Spanish riding school. And I was really torn back because he told me the saddle has to fit. The saddle has to fit the rider first before it fits the horse. And I thought, what? You know, so I grew up on horses. I rode all my life. And yes, I heard about saddle fitting before I went into saddle making. So after I did my 3-year apprenticeship program at Passir, then I went to 5-year journeyman and then made my master's in Germany. But never, ever somebody told me about how important it is to actually understand the anatomy of horse and rider while we make the saddles. So a master tells his students how we make saddles, what he knew from his masters. But something changed. And this is why I'm so happy about today's topic, because what changed is that the majority of the riders are, let's face it, females today. And when a doctor, not a saddle maker, not some fancy top rider, but a scientist, she says there is a massive difference, 9 different things between a male and female pelvis. And if you ignore them, you cause long-term damage to the rider. He even has a long chapter on why boys don't ride and why it can be damaging just as much to boys than to women. So I find that fascinating. And I understood now what they meant at the Spanish riding school, because we can't train pain. I just learned that from a doctor, veterinarian, as a matter of fact, in South Africa. Catalina Thiersen said that. You can't train pain. So what you do as a rider, you avoid it, you lean back, and then you hurt your disc. And when you sit, like you sit on the chair on the horse and sit hard into the horse's back, well, you can stuff the saddle, you can make wonderful saddles, but if you're on top of it like a jackhammer, you're pushing the saddle forward into the shoulder. So once around in the world, here I go every year, fly around the globe, and I get to meet all these incredible veterinarians. And these veterinarians are incredible in Sao Paulo. They have insane tools, and these tools are so cool, and I'm so pleased to say that Saddlefit for Life is now part of their curriculum. So as we know, when the leg goes forward, the scapula moves upwards, backwards. We have now veterinarians here, a veterinarian from New Zealand. She flies around the North America everywhere, as a matter of fact. And she helps and teaches people how to dissect horses in universities, of course. And she says, look at this. We can now show on the top right here, you can see this is the cartilage of the shoulder, how a saddle, a wrong adjusted saddle, can systematically cripple the horses. So here's Dr. Katarina Thiersen, and she dissected over 200 horses, and these horses have been all videotaped, and she knew how they were trained, what breeding, as well as how they've been ridden. So very easy to see because the bone tells the story. And this veterinarian who had this veterinarian clinic at the at the German training center in Warendorf, he stopped being a veterinarian because he lived by the oath, do no harm. And all what he did is injecting the legs, burning the nerves, always the same. Because as a berider, he was first, before he was a veterinarian, he learned to be a berider. So he's a professional trainer. So he sees a lot of people who hang in their mouth. Is it because they're sitting on the wrong saddle? Because no person ever, there's not a single cowboy here in North America who would ride on a Western saddle in female jeans. There is nobody who rides in the non-gender appropriate clothes, but yet many, many saddles built in the wrong gender appropriate saddles. And we want to get the hind leg underneath. We want to get the haunches underneath to eliminate the push and pressure onto the front legs and not ride the horse like a hammock. So we see all kinds of nasty kissing spines. We see horrible type of riding. Now, is it because the riders forgot how to ride, or is it because there is something wrong in today's breeding? And while we get to the main attraction from today, I want to finish off by saying we have even veterinarians who dedicated their time of riding and studying facial expression from horses. What does it mean? So Dr. Sue Dyson wrote the ethogram and facial expression of the horse's pain. Fascinating piece of equipment to read, right? So, and sometimes you did everything right, but you might be a wrong type of rider for that type of horse, or the equipment doesn't fit, or there might be something structural wrong. So pleased to say that our German and English books are now in several universities as textbooks. And we need to understand, with all the knowledge we have, we created Saddlefit for Life, which is an academy worldwide and now online, is there for all of you, like this podcast or this webinar, for all of you to think about, there is science, there's opinion, and then there's facts, there's a law of nature. And we also need to understand that something changed dramatically. What changed? Think about the historic perspectives and trends. Changes in the equine industry impacting horses and riders' well-being and how it affects the riding. So we have 4 of them. And the first one is what I want to focus today on it. Okay, and that is, it doesn't matter if you use your horse. We used to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, I should go back, thousands of years old bareback, but then we created a saddle, a working saddle, if you're in the Western or English. But we're facing a new problem, which I already addressed. And here today with me, I'm so happy to introduce to you Barbara Schulte. She is, as I said, a journalist and published German author, and phenomenal book. I have to admit, I haven't read it yet, but that's on my reading list. And I love her videos, and I'm so, so happy to have her here today. Hello, Barbara. How are you today?
Hello, Jochen. Yeah, I'm fine, and I'm like to talk about the development in horse breeding and what changes over the last 40 years. And when people talk about horses today and their health, they usually talk about how horses are raised and kept, preferably in groups and with spacious pastures like this one. But There's a lot of talk sometimes and heated discussions about horses are handled, trained, and ridden. People are eager to criticize wrong methods, but never questioning why people use those methods. What is the reason for the horse's treatment? Are they just evil minded? No, they don't think about their horse's body and how it functions. Nobody thinks about the changes horses had to endure through breeding selection. This is a development that goes on for more than 40 years. Changes started slowly and rarely recognizable, but they became increasingly problematic. In this picture, in this picture, we see a young stallion representing the modern design of a sports horse, the so-called uphill model, with enormous thrust from the hind legs, elongated front legs, and giving at first glance the impression of a well-trained riding horse. But a horse fit for carrying a rider should look like this Baroque horse here in the picture on the right, with well-developed muscles, especially strong hindquarters, and with joints assembled on top of each other, working like a spring, lifting the back and the rider up. Instead, you see on the left-hand side the spine of the modern sports horse pointing downwards towards the front, putting almost all the weight of the horse and rider on the front legs. And if you look down at the fetlocks here of both horses, do you see a difference? Which one is bending down and showing the pressure? That's the one here on the left, the modern horse. The Baroque horse can lift up with his joint, rightly assembled joints, lift up the back and lift up the pressure from the front legs. Sadly, this bending of the fetlocks is not caused just by training methods, but it's a result of breeding. The breeding selection for spectacular gaits prefers highly mobile horses, resulting nowadays in hypermobility. This picture shows a 2-year-old mare, the winner of a show class, and her fetlocks are so far overstretched they are close to the ground here. And hypermobility is not only limited to the fetlocks, it affects all the joints and the back too. A sway back is quite common these days. Or another problem is an unstable back. Like with this mare, she tilts her hindquarters like this. So with every step, her back is turning right to right and to left. And there is scientific evidence of some horses' spines tilting sideways. The X-rays show, I try to show it with my fingers, that the horses' spines are very close together nowadays, and sometimes they are touching like kissing spines, and sometimes they are tilting and overlapping one in front of the other. And that is a sign of the spine actually turning inside the horse. And unfortunately, the breeding judges, as well as the dressage judges, want to see this movement in the back. They think it's proof of a well working, flexible muscles, but they are wrong. This is a sign of a slack, weak, and feeble muscular system. The tilting movement of the back is so strong, genetically disposed, that even a horse trained to highest level standard cannot overcome it. In this picture, they show an extended canter in a dressage competition. But look at and you can see the tilting of the back here. And you can see the footfall, and it's not a 3-beat canter. This footfall shows a 4-beat gallop, and that's caused by the frequent use of thoroughbreds in warm blood breeding. And the 4-beat gallop of a thoroughbred shows never more than 2 legs on the ground. No, they start with one hind leg and continue with 2 hind legs and the front legs up, as in the picture we've seen already. And then in the 3-beat canter, a horse starts. No, sorry. A horse starts with one leg, one hind leg, and continues with 3 feet on the ground and the front leg lifted. So bred only for speed, the thoroughbred has a very strong downward tendency of the spine here. And that's now established in warm blood too. And as you can see, oh no, sorry. So the elongated front legs don't secure that the spine is uplifted because there is no skeletal connection like in our human collarbone to fix the spine to the breastbone or the shoulder blades. The spine still can point downwards, like with this show jumper, and it's actually a phase in canter when the spine should show upwards. Like here in this picture. And here you see it's the one hind leg on the ground and the back is up or at least level and 3 legs in the air. Another example of almost similar phase is the eventing horse here. And you can see the horse's feet are barely off the ground. The spine points downwards. The rider's weight is pushed so hard onto the shoulder that the saddle is tilting forward and lifting off the back. And now this is a picture taken nearly 45 years ago in the 70s of last century. It's the same footfall like with the eventing horse, and the back is level and the rider sits lightly on top and the saddle fits perfectly.
Wow, that was quite something. And I have to say, Barbara, that was so precise. In German, we would say typisch Deutsch. And that's what really brings the point across. And as a rider, as a trainer, and a judge myself, as well as a saddle maker, that opened so many questions. And one of them, of course, took the liberty to take some pictures of one of the videos you made. And I can only encourage all of our listeners and to share this video, to look at this video from Barbara. Unbelievable. And in this video, you explained the rectangle used to be. You mind expanding a little bit about the rectangles?
Yeah, the black and white picture shows a stallion in the 70s, and we called it standing over a lot of ground. So he has a broad chest, a broad back, and so the legs, the front legs, the hind legs stand apart, not very close together as in modern horses nowadays. And the back is a little bit longer than Yeah. So it's a rectangle. It's not a quadrant, but a rectangle. The back is longer than the legs. And on the right-hand side, there's the modern horse nowadays, and the legs are so long and the back is so short that it's an upright rectangle. And the problem is, uh, no, I have to extend. When they started to make the horses more mobile, they got problems with the back. And then they said, okay, the long back is not good for riding. It's too weak. We have to shorten the back. But with a very short back, the horse can't really uplift the spine. Uh, I showed it in those videos as well with a little
Whip.
whip, and it's not so flexible if the back is short. And the other thing is, with these long legs, they catch their front with the hind legs, and therefore they have to be bandaged and take special protections for their hooves. And actually have to wear those protections even if they go out on pasture. Uh, not only while it's being ridden. So that's causes some damage to the horses. And on the other hand, sometimes the legs are so long that the horses can't eat normally by uh, hay or grass from the ground. They have to uh, even when they're adult, they have to spread their legs like a foal, or as folds, they have to go on to their knees and eat and feed from their knees, because they can't reach the grass normally. And
That is, you know, that video I have seen so many times, and I have my wife help me sometimes with the PowerPoint, and she says to me, I don't want to see that video again. It makes me cry.
yeah,
And I know you don't want to make people cry, but I like it because it brings the point across. I cannot stand when people want to sugarcoat something. There's one scene where you're shown the breeder sweet talk while that poor fool tries to survive. It breaks my heart. And for all of you listeners, please watch this video, not to cry, but to get an idea what is happening out there. It's the breeders, you know, they've done this for a long time. So your question is, and that question is to you, Barbara, why do you think they're doing this? Why do you think they're breeding these horses like that?
yeah, some of those breeders, they don't think for themselves, so they uh, uh, listen to what the breeding uh, companies tell them, and what the stallion owner tells them, and they tell them all sorts of stories. And on the other hand, they sometimes they want to sell them as foals. Um, Nowadays, people don't raise horses anymore um, to and start to train and ride them, because that takes too long. That's too intensive, and so they want to sell them as foals. And as foals, they must look spectacular as well. And uh, I think that's the reason, and people don't think about it. When I first saw the first foal kneeling on the ground, I thought, that's it. If I show it on a video, there will be a general outcry. But no, people tell me in all honesty that it's a natural thing, because it's unhealthy for a foal to eat grass. They have to drink their mother's milk, and therefore it's caused by natures that their legs are so long. And they won't believe when I show them pictures that uh, usually every foal starts to nibble, even shortly hours after they're born. They start to nibble at grass, and it's not unhealthy, and it's not unnatural.
Yeah. Barbara, it makes me sick to my stomach. You and I have been around for a while, and young people who come in the sports and love horses, they haven't seen these old horses, maybe from old pictures, and they just do what they've been told, and there's very few of them. But there's more and more people who know the question. And I tell you what I believe. I believe that the industry, there's so much money to be made with saddles, with selling horses, breeding horses, riding lessons, etc. But the majority of the riders today, and especially our listeners, they love their horse from the bottom of their heart. And majority of the riders are not spectacular sport riders. They are pleasure riders. Now, I understand also that there's a lot of people who do a lot of crossbreeding. And as a saddle maker, which is an absolutely nightmare, when people start to mix the breeds, because there's no more control and everybody can do what they want to do. What's your side or opinion on crossbreeding?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of crossbreeding in horses, in dogs or whatsoever, because you, as a breeder, it's sort of a lottery. Even with a specimen of the same breed, if they are not really related, it's always a lottery what will come out. So you can win and have a super horse, but usually, and especially if you want to breed further on with this specimen of the crossbreed, then yeah, you never know what will happen. So it would be quite good if breeders would a little bit read about Mendel's laws and how the things spread and the diversity that would come out of a crossbreed.
Yeah, I'd like to share with you a customer of ours or a volunteer who sent in a little video, and she says, I'm so frustrated. It's a young horse, and I had changed saddle after saddles, and people say, oh, there's something wrong with the ovary, so I scanned it, and I had x-ray from top to bottom, checked for ulcers now, looked at the feet, the bits, the bridle. Even a veterinarian who specialized in biomechanic rode the horse, and they cannot find anything wrong with this horse, right? And of course, the saddle fitter said it's not wrong. So when we come from the horse on the left to a horse to the right, my problem is I'm running out of real estate. So if I'm looking at this picture here, this rider here is sitting on the horse, and this horse has a super hard time with contact. Hindquarters are always way out. And if I let this, let me just start from the beginning. I'm going to stop this picture in a minute to show you what I'm looking for. I learned from Paul Stecken mapping the horse. And mapping the horse means you always look at the area in the rear. Mm-hmm. So that's a dark area. That's a loin area. So if the horse's back gets shorter and shorter, oh, you see it better here in this picture. Oh, not quite yet. There. No, it's the right moment. So the saddle clearly is in that, what he called, Paul Stecken called that spot the dark zone. So if a saddle sits past the last rib in that dark zone, then here we see the lumbers versus processes, and that is super problematic and painful for the horse. So with all these breedings what we come across, you know, we can show if the saddle stays away from the lumbar in an area where, well, they always had it, and where it doesn't hurt the horse will show it to you if it's with breeding. I mean, you talked about scientific analogy earlier. There is simple tools on your cell phones where you can measure the horse's heart rate, calorie burn, cadence, elevation, trot symmetry. So we don't need expensive equipment anymore to say, hey, that horse is in pain. But for me as a as a horse owner, rider. Number one on the problem, if we turn that pyramid upside down, there's an old saying, no horse, no hoof, no horse.
Yeah.
But if the breeding is so upside down or so changed that it only becomes for selling expensive horses, expensive foals, people like this lady, she loves a horse, right? Some people buy horses, okay, they bought it on some fancy auction or from a breeder who crossbreed horses, but then all kinds of issue comes. And I understand that my instructor says we didn't have these saddle problems like we have today. And you just explained why. So my questions to you and to probably from a lot of listeners, what can we do?
Yeah, the best thing to do would be to change the breeding, but that's a long-term thing. It would take years, and it would take a significant group of breeders. No breeder can do it on its own. Because you can't keep so many horses to have a genetic diversity, and yes, but you can do a little bit of training, and but for this type of training, you should be aware of the biomechanics. You should try to usually with these horses, the legs, as you said before, the legs stay behind the horse and are in a pushing position. But as I showed with the Baroque horse, the leg should be under the hip. It should be the joints should be collected on top of another in a vertical line, and one can train the horse to collect a little bit more the legs under the body, and only when the legs are under the body they can lift the back upwards. So one can try to do that, but it takes time, and it is usually the best is to do it without sitting on top of the horse. All these things you should do, yeah, in hand or on a lunge rein, and yeah. The very first thing one should do nowadays is to straighten the horse, because with the more downward tendency, the horses are more to one side, and one should straighten them up. And you can do that this actually on a lunge, but not in a circle line, but on in a straight line. And you would walk a little bit behind the horse, so that you can see the back. And actually, with all this training, one should have the trainer's eye on the back of the horse, not if the legs move in a special way. The back should be um, have an upward tendency. That's your aim, and to straighten the back of the horse, and
Yes.
that's the beginning.
And actually, before you continue, I wanted you to briefly talk about the consequences of the horses who are bred nowadays with thrust as opposed to carrying power. What is the difference? And what are the consequences that we see, especially in your video, Horses in Handstand? If you can share with some of our viewers what issues these horses are facing and how they're not able to do simple, well, not simple movements, but the classical movements that we saw in the past, such as Piaffe.
Yeah, as I said before, the whole point, especially of dressage, is to shift the point of the center of gravity to the back, because in the back legs, the joints are stronger than in the front, and when they take more weight with their hindquarters, the horse can not really lift up its front legs, but they're lighter. And I always have this analogy: when you have a trailer and you lift in the front, you lift it up so that it's not on 4 wheels but only on the behind 2 wheels. Then you can turn it in a very small circle, but when it's on 4 wheels, it's very heavy and it takes a much bigger circle. And that's with horses as well. When they really take the weight on their hindquarters, you can turn on a plate, as they say. And but if the horse is in a pushing position, that's the more or less normal position for a horse, because it's an animal to take flight when there's danger. So the pushing position for a horse in the wild is a preferable thing. But if it should carry a rider, then it shouldn't be pushing. And when it's pushing, the rider tries to stop it by holding on to the reins, and it just makes things worse. And that's and because those highly competitive dressage riders, they don't alter the biomechanics, they don't shift the center of gravity to the back. They just try to teach them how to move their legs, and therefore they can't do a piaffe on the spot anymore, because the whole time the hind legs are pushing, and so the horse is moving forwards. And but they get very high points for it, because it's the one-eyed is the king under the blind people. So
I think that's kind of what this here shows well. Oops.
Sorry, I just want to illustrate for people what that actually looks like. And Barbara, feel free to speak over this, because this is actually your video.
One sees he enters in passage, and now it's piaffe, and they're hopping. The hind legs are hopping up, and it should be just the opposite. The hind legs should take more weight, and the front legs should lift up. And here it's the other way around. The whole and the fetlocks give way to the ground, and when the video carries on, we see the different footfall, and here you see the backs giving way. It's absolutely contrary to the aims, and here the horse hops up and stands with 2 feet on the ground.
So
and
maybe
as well,
change the dressage to gymnastic for humans, or handstand rather than piaffe. Change the word piaffe to handstand.
Yeah, it's like a circus thing. Yeah, but it has nothing to do with education of the horse and improve the body of the horse.
Well, that's, I think, a great segue. Sonia, are you done with that?
Yep, you can take over again.
That's maybe a great segue of what you were saying earlier. And I wanted to ask you about that. Horse A is what the old masters taught us. Get the hind leg underneath so that they're light in the front. And if the horse's back drops, the fetlock will drop. And you said something in your presentation: judges want to see it, that they tilt the spine left to right. And here, sadly to say, I covered it up, but that's the German rider as well. And you can see how far back the legs are. And they're trying to ride these hypermobility horses, and you just said it again, trying to make these leg flare up. And one of the cool videos, you showed the most successful dressage horse in history with Gigolo. And you said it very kindly, says it's not like the riders have Alzheimer and forgot how to ride properly. They've done it before, but now they do it. It's almost like there should be a boycott, because from what I learned from my master is we ride these horses so they are sustainable. In other words, they last longer and are not euthanized by the time they're 8 or 9, maybe 10. Like, how old did Gigolo go at? 26, you said in the video?
26 or 27, yes, yeah.
Unbelievable. So maybe the tilting of the spine, what judges want to see, how come we can't get that? I mean, that's when I was with Cinephone. We went all down to Fritz Stahlecker's training center in Marburg, and he wrote a book, Hand, Sattel, Hand. And saddle hand, twice as much behind the horse than on the horse. Kind of like you just said, you know, heavy horse and long reining. But do you think it's just simple, the money and the power and the commercial in these animals, what makes these horses become, well, part of the money-making machine?
Yes, I think so. I remember in the mid 70s, I saw the first picture of a horse lifting the front leg nearly horizontal, and it was called Moving Wonder, and people just loved it. And when I saw this picture, I talked to a friend of mine, a very good breeder and dressage rider, and I asked him, "Do you think that's healthy?" And he said, "No, I don't think so." But those horses impressed the judges, and I think it was probably Rembrandt who changed the whole thing, the horse Rembrandt. He was winning with his legs up, and everybody who wanted to be successful in dressage looked for this kind of horse. And because so many people looked for this kind of horse, and there weren't that many horses at the time, the prices for those horses did get up. And one can't blame breeders to try to breed for a horse that would sell well, when the ordinary riders who love their horses, but they don't want to spend very much money on it. And we had, at least in Germany, a time where so many horses were on the market that the ordinary horse, the more or less healthy horse, was really sold very cheaply, and no breeder can live from horses that won't earn the money the breeders spend on raising them.
Now, you loved Lipizzaner. Tell me a little bit about your passion. Not that this is part of the problem, but you chose Lipizzaner because your first horse, what was his name again? I read your bio, but I forgot. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he was called Zahib, but
Zahib, that's
yeah,
right.
Zahib, yeah.
But why did you decide to breed Lipizzaners?
Yeah, I started to breed warm blood, but then at that time it started that you couldn't sell. At that time, you sold horses that were young but ridden, but you couldn't sell a horse well when they weren't already entered into competition, and I didn't want to ride and train and my horse at that young age, because my first riding teacher, he was at the military academy in Hanover, and he said a horse is for 3 years what they called a remonte, a young horse that has to learn for 3 years how to be ridden and to be introduced to the various kinds of riding, jumping, being out. Yeah, and so I didn't like to go in with 3-year-olds into competition, and then I said, okay, why not go back to my old love, to the Lipizan horse, and to breed horses designed for dressage, but who were not used in competition. And actually, it's quite funny because although it's a horse yeah, bred for high dressage movements, the judges in Germany don't like Libizan horses in competition. They
Yeah,
say, with your pony, you can't win a prize.
that's right.
And
No, it changed a little bit, right? I know that I was told it was not allowed, but now they show anything from Lusitanos to Andalusians.
yeah, they have those special competitions for Baroque horses, and sometimes people just enter, and you're not forbidden, but you usually can't win anything because they are not bred for these extended movements. But sadly, um, uh, no, going back, another point I liked the breed very much is because it's so very old. So it's the oldest European breed still surviving, and there is as well genetic evidence that there are still more than 60% of the genes still uh, of the Baroque type. So it's not that much altered. But on the other hand, because so many people want bigger horses, want horses with more movement, breeders start again to breed the Libizan bigger and with more movement, and it's not good for those horses.
Mhm.
And yeah, and actually there is these people criticizing the Spanish riding school in Vienna for using the low and down and deep and rolling up the neck of the horses. And
Yeah, I saw
I,
that.
yeah, and I say it's not that they want to do it, but it is that those horses as well get more mobile and their necks give more way. And so you can see those pictures, although it's not intentionally.
Yes, yes. Well, I have one more question. I know this is for the audience, but you're such a fascinating person, so I thought I'd take that opportunity, totally selfish, asking you all these questions. Tell me a little bit about your Hessische Stute Wildkatze. When did you ride her, and what breeding was she?
She was a Hessen breed, but she was bred from Hanoverian horses, and she had, I always said, she had the thoroughbred running out of her ears, because she had a thoroughbred in every line, but she looked more or less like a Baroque horse. And she was a really exceptional horse, uh, 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 absolutely fine under side saddle, and you really could ride her just with the shifting of your weight. And she was always keen to work, so it really was the best horse I ever had. So,
Well,
but she was bred in 79. She was born in 79. So that was the period where they, yeah, bred with lots of thoroughbreds to improve the sturdy, strong warm blood. And that was fine at that stage. She was an exceptional horse, but later on they kept using thoroughbred more and more, and it's just too much nowadays.
Now, Barbara, do you have your book in English?
No, sadly, we didn't find a publisher who would like to translate it.
So
Although there are plenty of people asking for an English edition.
yeah, my wife translated my German book into English and found an American publisher who works with Cavallo as well, because my books are also now printed by Cavallo, because I assume your book original was von Wuwei, right? You work with Isabel Sonntag?
No. She didn't like it.
Jochen, I'm just going to take over now, though, because we do have some questions from our viewers.
Okay.
And the first one, this one's not specifically from our viewers, but it's from the videos that we posted of yours. What are some of the structures that we see breaking first in the horses, in these modern horses? What falters or what gives way first?
Yeah, as I said, it's usually the fetlock, because it's the weakest point. But on the other hand, I think I have in one of my videos no, not in the videos, no, but there is these kind where the back of the horse looks very much like a Alsatian, a German Shepherd, the hound, and with the German Shepherd, it's hip dysplasia that causes problems, and that can't happen with a horse, because the joints are very fixed in the pelvis, but the sacroiliac joint is the problem. That's not very strong, and but it's important for the horse to lift up the back, and if that's has too much strain in the beginning, or too much weight on top of the horse's back, it will be damaged and it can't be repaired. It's a damage that will stay there and will really ruin the horse.
Okay, and in regards to the breeds, I know you mentioned Lipizzaner, but are there any breeds in existence today that are not affected by these new standards, or less affected?
I think they are all more or less affected. And if you look for a horse, you really have to look closely. And I would advise to take pictures or maybe a video and look at home at those, if you can see a fetlock pushing down or the back giving way, and then it would be better to look for another horse.
Barbara, if you look at this picture here, what would you say when you see this picture? I don't know the horse, and somebody sent us this and says, "Oh, look at this beautiful horse," and oh my God, there's not a room for a saddle.
Yeah, that's right, and it's a lot of space underneath the belly. That's what one said, and actually, it's only slightly. But if you look, the front legs, they are set back. Usually, the front legs should be straight underneath the body, like a column, like a and that's how nature wanted the front leg to be positioned, and so the setback front legs is a sign that there's too much pushing from behind. And I think the back line is a little bit slopey. It's
And if you look at the size of the neck versus the length of the legs, there's your dead giveaway, isn't it?
Yeah.
That horse will have circles. Also, that horse stands very close. One of the comments in your presentation was that the horse's chest is very small these days.
Yeah.
And it almost looks, I had a customer in California. She says, "Oh, do you have any recommendation? I barely get my hand to brush in between." I mean, how this horse could even walk without falling over? This is advanced. Seriously, there was no more than 8 centimeters between the two legs. I have never
Yeah.
seen anything like this.
Yeah.
And then,
That's so important to give room for the heart and the lungs. Yeah. And
I mean, it's like you said yesterday when we talked briefly. It's everything is so easy to explain, to show scientifically. The horses won't last. So if you're after horses who win fast the medal and what gives you quick results for short term, that's, I think, what the market goes for. But I think the statistic shows that more and more people are heartbroken when they see horses who checked out. They're psychological dead inside. The light disappeared out of their eyes. They're giving up on life, you know, and majority of the people, especially you and I who grew up with horses, we breathe horse. And when an animal is suffering, we are suffer. So I don't have any compassion for people who beat on their horse and hit the horse, if it's the saddle or if it's the horse just can't do it anymore. I don't understand these people. And then you see poor horses who barely can move their back anymore. I mean, this is the extreme case, right?
Oh dear. Yeah.
That everything is fused, and like you said too, you know, we see more and more problems. You did the example with the fingers, you know, kissing spine.
Yeah.
So it is scary, absolutely scary how much incidents we see. And I'm so glad that you came along and open up and helping us and helping people to understand this overriding processes, also known as kissing spine, is a man-made problem now due to the bad breeding.
Yep. Yep.
Tony, do you have any other questions?
Actually, I had one for you and Jochen, in regards to how many saddle fitters and many saddle manufacturers are dealing with the hypermobility in horses who have a shorter saddle support area, but riders who require a 17.5, 18, 19-inch seat. What we're seeing in regards to the fit types, for example, the hyperextension fit or the sport fit, and the damage that we're seeing, such as kissing spine and other issues.
Yeah, the most successful way of fitting these horses is what we call the modern sport fit. So the saddle gets purposely pressed with short metal points. So here we got a gullet plate, and onto the gullet plate is already riveted the stirrup bar. So when I push in, this point will directly dig into the scapula, so we get a little bit more flick with the front leg, because that's what you get the high money now with the front leg flicks. Then we have the clothespin fit. It sits tight over the horse's spine. Here's the pelvis of a human. And just like on a human or on the horse, in the vertebrae, and this hole is where all the nerves go through. And on the sides, the spinal nerves comes out. Where my finger is on top, that's the strength, the multifidus. Now, if I fit a saddle to pinch the multifidus, in other words, I make a very narrow channel. Here's a close-up of that vertebrae. Here you see the nerves. Here you see the multifidus muscle. So if I make the channel, that's the back part of the saddle, really, really, really narrow, then I clip that saddle on like a clothespin, like I fix my jacket on a laundry line. So that way the saddle doesn't go left and right. And if the horse's spine goes left and right, the saddle doesn't fall that fast. So I clip that saddle on and make it super, super tight. And that is something what is, of course, ridiculous when we see saddles that have so narrow channels. There's not one army saddle, not one Baroque saddle, what I have seen in the history, that the saddles have narrow channels. And then the worst part is, in order to really increase the thrust and get the forward extension, hollow back, comes out of this sport. This doesn't exist in Europe. This saddle is designed to push hard into the lumbar, hollow the back. That way the horse can raise the head and get even more shoulder lift or flick, whatever you want to call it. And the modern sport fit, Sonia, your question, they combine everything from clothespin to hyperextension to bridge. Because if I make the saddle hollow in the middle, like here, in other words, like a bridge, it just digs in the front, digs in the back. It anchors into the tissue, like you see here. The saddle won't move because the back barely moves anyway, can't move, as we already heard. And I create a better flicking front leg. And if you are blind and you have no clue about dressage, you think, yeah, look at that. That's a pretty cool horse. That should get a little big level. And then if you're also greedy and have no heart and are totally an animal abuser, you go for this. But if you want to make sure that you fit a saddle, like my master told me, and my riding master told me, he says, humans have elbows. And on that elbow is what we call a funny bone, which is not a bone, it's a nerve ending. So when you, in Deutsch sagen wir Musikantenknochen. So when you hit that funny bone, that's not a lot of pressure and it goes all the way to your pinky. So through all my studies and everybody told me there is 6 spinal nerves, then on the wither area. This one here, that affects the horse's breathing. So if the horse already is bred wrong with narrow legs, now you make a saddle what pushes with the metal against it to get a better flick, the horse is a massive stress, which we can test through blood testing because we know the cortisol level. That's how we measure stress. So think of these points as funny bones. So with light touch, the horse will get an electric shock. That's how it feels. And the horse will create an unnatural flick, what some people think is what is the right cat's meow. So for me, I'm ashamed, I'm disgusted, just like Barbara is with her breeding colleagues. The people breed these horrible horses, which are sweet horses, but they destroy, in my point, the sport and the horse. Just the way that Barbara is disgusted with those breeders, I'm disgusted with saddle makers and saddle fitters who hurt the horse to get even more unnatural. Well, we called it show trot, and as a judge, I was back then allowed to kick them out of my ring. I just rang the bell and says, go to Circus Rally or to whoever. So that is nothing to do with helping the horse. This is just systematic destroying a horse so you make more money or in whatever. So I'm getting off topic. I'm very sensitive about this because this is something I cannot stand. At the Spanish riding school, what they teach for 400 years, a pliable seat, which means we are humans are born in nature to walk and are still in some parts of this world, they run around barefoot and they run like a cat. When a cat runs around, she runs on the paws, and the paws has a little cushioning. The dog has the same thing. We are not dogs, we are not cats, but we have also cushioning underneath our ball of a foot. So behind our toe, that's the ball of the foot. So we are by nature meant to run on the ball of the foot. The heels, our hocks, the horse's hocks, okay? That is just landing surfaces, a human designed shoe. So when people run barefoot or walk barefoot, they land, they take the impact like the cat or the dog, like any animals, with the cushioning part, the ball of the foot. As some riding instructors have thousands of years, Xenophon was the first who demanded from his riders that type of riding, so they can yield the weapon in one hand and they can control the horse with the seat, okay? But they demanded a proper seat. That means shoulder, hips, and heels, one line. Because only when you have shoulder, hips, and heels, one line, you have a pliable seat. Or in this case, they talk about a perpendicular line. And what do they teach since 400 years? Without a pliable seat, it is not possible to achieve oscillation in the horse's back. And a horse, and if it cannot oscillate, the horse will suffer pain. In other words, if you don't have a pliable seat, if you don't fit the saddle to the anatomy, if you don't have the rider by nature, let them have the balance the rider needs, okay, then it will happen that the horse will be damaged and the rider will be damaged. And I'm so glad that I can say that with such a certainty, because I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, but I'm a person who reads a lot and surrounds himself with people who have shown this so multiple times. And it's very straightforward if you think about physics.
And I'd actually like to dovetail back to Barbara, because she does talk about soundness in the body and its relationship to stress and spookiness. And Barbara, I'm wondering if you can explain to our viewers what the correlation is between modern standards, soundness in the body, stress levels, and how spooky some horses are these days.
Yeah, it's quite easy. As I said before, the horse is an animal that usually takes flight when there is danger, and the horse is very aware of his body, therefore, because it needs a capable body to take flight. And if the horse is aware that his body doesn't function very well, and might slip or fall or whatsoever, then it will be more spooky and take more and take earlier flight than a horse that's sure of its capability, because when it's sure of its capability, it has time to watch if something is really dangerous, and because it can watch and see, and if it's not dangerous, then it's all right. It spares himself some activity, and if it's dangerous indeed, then he can get away anyway, because he is capable of doing it. So, and therefore, the more problems, more bodily problems the horses has, the more spooky it will get. But things are changing a little bit, because with these hypermobility, the weakness of the body makes the horse weak and feeble as well, and it doesn't react as a normal horse did react before. And I think that's a little bit why people like those hypermobile horses. They know about the physical problems, but they say, oh, but they're such cool horses, they are so nice, I just love it. But it's as well a point of their wrong breeding, that they are so feeble and slack.
Yeah, so it's kind of explains why horses then all of a sudden run out of the dressage ring, you know. So when they have the pain, either in the back or the flight mechanism is there higher. So that makes so much sense, and it's so logical when I listen to you, you know. And it's interesting that people like Sue Dyson have to write an equine paper on listen what the horses have to say. You know, the eyes, the ears, they don't lie. And for me and Sonia, who work very hard on the Saddlefit for Life Academy, it's not all about the saddle. Of course, it's saddle fitting. That's what I do for a living. But it's also, people need to see the whole horse approach. You know, there's more to how to make a saddle or fit a saddle. We need to say, where does the saddle goes on? And when you because we have a lot of saddle fitters from all over the world and other saddle companies who listen to us, you know, and learn from us. And they say, you know, how come we have all these problems now? Well, back to the pyramid, you know, it all starts with the breed. And
Yes.
Sonia, do you want to tell a little bit about the goal and mission of Saddlefit for Life and why it was
Sure.
so amazing to have Barbara along today?
So while our academy is called Saddlefit for Life, we do focus on whole horse care because we understand that no part of the horse works in exclusivity. So tension in the back will translate to the legs. Tension in the tongue will translate to the hind feet. Tension anywhere on the body can be seen. And the horse as a whole works together. All parts have to move together for the horse to, first of all, last, to move properly, to not get injured, to not remain stuck in flight mode and constantly be spooky. So that's why we bring on professionals such as Barbara, such as Dr. Catalina Thierson, the Helen Davies Equine Research Project, and so many more collaborators, because we focus on whole horse care. And while, like I said, our focus is on saddle fit, it relates to so many other areas of equine care that we're trying to bring everything together and really paint the whole picture for our viewers. And that's what Saddlefit for Life Academy is doing. We have our core curriculum of saddle fitting courses, which also include in-depth look at anatomy, at biomechanics, at riding, rider health, rider posture, and the postural health of the horse, because you can fit a saddle perfectly. And when I say perfectly, I mean perfectly. But if the rider is unbalanced, if the horse for some reason is unbalanced, that saddle will not fit any longer. So that's why we focus on all the factors that affect saddle fit. And we are excited to announce that we have new courses coming out. Barbara is going to be working with us and creating her own course that focuses on breeding standards and the consequences that it has on the modern sport horse, which I'm sure all of our viewers have experienced to some degree, as well as Dr. Gerd Hirschman and other collaborators who will be creating short courses as well. So not only can you learn to become an equine or saddle ergonomist, but you can also customize your education and learn a bit more about, for example, breeding or skeletal damage that happens based on rider imbalance, horse imbalance, repetitive movement, and so much more. So we're constantly working to make our our catalog of courses larger. And we listen to our followers, we listen to our students, we ask them, what do you want to learn more of? What do you want to see? What are the issues that you see when you're out in the field? And when they tell us, we find the professionals who specialize in that, and we bring them on board.
So one of the things what I like with all our students is we send those links, what you have on your videos, Barbara, on YouTube. We say to them, watch this, you've got to understand where the saddle sits on it. The horse today doesn't look like the horse on the left anymore. The majority of the horses look on the right. And we have, as I said earlier, a huge shift in the industry. And what that is clearly is the fact that it's not just the breeds, but it's also the type of rider who sits on top, hence Dr. James Warson. So when we know all the problems we're facing now, from breed, from rider gender, I mean, today we have riders, number 4 is horsemanship and riders know-how. Barbara, I assume, and no, I don't assume because I read your bio, you are with horses since the day you can breathe the air. So you're from Kindesbein on the horse. So you know how they breathe, what the eye means. But the majority of the riders are now baby boomers who start late, who going to horses for the very first time in their late 30s, 40s, and sometimes 50s. So for me, wow, they got a lot of guts, because that's a whole, like my old riding master, he also was in Hanover cavalry officer. He said to me, it takes 3 human lifetimes to learn how to ride. So if you start half your lifetime to ride, you got lots of catching up. But that's where I think the sport gets away with making these false claims, what people believe. And if you make it a little fancy and make horses into Marionettenpuppen. I don't know what that's in English.
Yeah,
like
marionette, the little
puppet. I mean, they're just fling up the legs, and there's no beauty. I said that before. I do competitive ballroom dancing. That's for me is taking a woman and just shove her back and forth and say, look, we dance. There's no harmony. There's no soul. Barbara, how did you say it? Can you help me with the sentence? Ich sage es mal auf Deutsch. I say it in German first. Stets habe ich mich bemüht, die jeweilige Persönlichkeit des Pferdes zu erfassen und die gemeinsame Arbeit als Zweisprache zu verstehen. How would you say that in English?
Yeah, I always tried to find out the personality of the specific horse I was riding, and with my with all what I'm doing on top of the horse, with my legs, with my hands, with my weight, I try to keep a conversation going. Yeah, I'm listen to what to the reactions of the horse, and I take them seriously, and I always think that the horse has a special cause why it is doing what it's doing, and it's not because it's bad or unwilling, but it has a cause why it's doing, and I always wanted my horses to respond eagerly and to like the work we are doing together.
I love that. To like the work we do together. That says it all right there for me. And I think I said that before, so I'm looking for a slide I showed earlier. This horses has already checked out. Says, okay, keep beating me. There's so many people who don't do what you just said, who don't try to find the what was it, Zweisprache, the combination, the relation with the horse. It says, oh, don't buck or don't run away, and then just hit him. No, a horse doesn't buck just because it wants to buck. When a horse, what is 11 years old or 8 years old, all of a sudden starts violently bucking, there's a reason. Yes, you can ignore your saddle fitting or hoof or tongue or body problems. You can ignore the holes, what's in the back of the horse, what's dug in by saddles, right? You can go ahead and deform the horse, but I think the majority of the people, Barbara, are like you and me. And the majority of the listeners from all over the world want to do good for the horse. And I'm so glad that we have found you, and you're helping us to spread the words that there are different horses now. And when you have pictures you mentioned like this, we need to maybe send them in and says, what do you think, about this horse? It took you 2 seconds to put your comments 2 and 2 together. Now, before I fall in love with this, so maybe they should have a dating site for horses on the internet, and you'll be the matchmaker.
Okay.
With all your years of experience as a breeder, and you so beautiful explained it, and I will definitely help you to find a publisher for your book. So because it got to be in English, and Sonia, I'm speechless in so many ways, because I can go on and on and on, but I think we need to find a way to get all the videos from Barbara on our sites. Barbara, how many videos do you have?
That's a good question. I think it's 7 or 8. Yeah. I'm not quite sure. And they're in German and in English, but it's the same subject. And I'm planning another one, but it's it's just always a time issue.
Of course.
To find the time. Yeah.
So one of the next time we spoke, I definitely want to speak to you and to our listeners how you talked about Isabel Wert's horse, and success, and how the professional have to adapt to ride these hypermobility horses. I think that would be a fabulous topic for a lot of people out there. So, Sonia, do you have any questions left?
I don't think I have any questions left. I did want to leave one final statement with our viewers in that Saddlefit for Life, we don't train saddle fitters. We don't train equine, we don't train saddle fitters. What we do is we create equine advocates. We train people to understand the horse. We train people to be able to read what the horse is trying to say, because so often they are ignored. Their pain is labeled as misbehavior. And our goal is to make sure that every single one of our students, regardless of what course you take, whether it's our certificate course or one of the online, is that you come out the other side more aware of what your horse is trying to tell you. That is what we do, and that is what sets us apart from all the other schools, is that we don't turn out saddle fitters. That is not what we do. That is not what we will ever do. We turn out people who are willing to listen to the horse, to put their needs first before a saddle sale, before a tack sale, before anything. First and foremost, we care for the horse. We listen to the horse and we make sure that they are protected.
Barbara, do you have any other parting words, advice you want to give to our audience?
Yeah, look into the eyes of your horse, and then you see their soul.
Oh, that's so nice. That's so nice. Well, thank you so much for being part of this today. It was an absolute delight and pleasure. The hour and 20 minutes went by too fast in my case. But
yes, I enjoyed this as well.
It was such a lovely time, and I can see that there's many, many more meetings or webinars hopefully to come together. So I like to say thank you to everybody. Our usual Friday webinars, stay tuned. We always looking for more collaborators who are speaking for the horse first before the big money and push. So I say goodbye with my favorite video. Goodbye, everybody. See you next Friday.
Bye-bye.